I've been disappointed in Houston's defensive line, particularly watching them play Chicago.
Between the Bengals and the Commanders, I'm picking the Commanders for probably a really wild upset at plus 7.5.
I'm picking Atlanta to upset the Chiefs.
Literally, my hands are getting clammy as I'm talking about this because an AP ranking 8. 8's a single number.
Friday football forecast. Banana, banana. Recording from New York and Los Angeles, your hosts, Nicole Katz and Briana Klein, are emerging from the tunnel for this week's show. Another sports show is ready to broadcast to you on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Make us one of your stars of the game by subscribing, liking the video, and turning on auto downloads. Before we kick off, please leave us a podcast review and YouTube comment. Attend the postgame on social media for exclusive daily content. Today on another sports show.
On this week's edition of Friday Football Forecast, we're going to run through all the big games in the NFL, starting with our NFL game of the week. This week, we're talking all about Ravens at Cowboys. Then, of course, we move on to our Doormat game of the week, pick some major underdogs, and talk a little bit about the offensive and defensive line that you should pay attention to this week. We take a detour at Nicole's fantasy team and talk about her interesting quarterback conundrum. And really, we get to figure out, is the adage true? If you have two quarterbacks, do you really have any? And last but not least, we take a trip to the college football corner, talk about USC at Michigan, pick our top 25 team for putting on upset alert, and of course, Nicole picks the University of Miami Hurricanes game. And with that, take it away, voiceover man.
It's another sports show, but it's not. Game of the week.
NFL, week 3. In a weird way, I can't believe we're already at week 3 of the NFL season. It's moving too fast, and I'm feeling like slow down, but also speed up.
It's almost over!
Our game of the week this week is Ravens at Cowboys. Both of these teams are coming off very disappointing losses to different degrees. I would say the Ravens had a devastating meltdown just at the end of the game, and the Cowboys had an all-around trash performance of a game. But these are still two of the best rosters in the NFL. They're going head-to-head this week. Nicole, who do you have in our game of the week?
Acknowledging my bold take here, I'm picking the Ravens.
You think that's a bold take? I think it's the game of the week because either of these teams could win.
But I don't necessarily feel, at least the Cowboys have demonstrated that they can win, have won, even though it was against the Browns, which may not count as a football team. But Ravens going into Cowboys at home, I think adds like a level to it. But I kind of just also think the Ravens are so desperate for a win right now that Lamar will find almost any possible way to win this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, really stacked rosters on both sides. I think it's going to be close.
I would argue that both of these teams have shown that they can be a good team, but the Ravens have actually shown it against the Chiefs. Despite not pulling out the win at the end of the game there, I think the Ravens have looked better against the best possible opponent. I don't know what's going on with the Browns right now, so... but all of that being said, I really doubt that the Cowboys lose back-to-back games at home, so I'm going to predict the Cowboys win.
Oh, she said it! Oh, my God! Oh, guys, yeah. Things are not okay. Things are not fine. Everyone, alert. Things are not well. This is not okay. This is very scary for Briana.
I'm trying to make a
checkup call.
I'm trying to make a prediction with my brain and not my emotions and my heart. But that being said, I completely agree with you. I think the Ravens going 0-3 would be shocking to me. So rooting for the Ravens, unfortunately picking the Cowboys here.
Yeah, Ravens 0-3, Cowboys losing back-to-back at home. There's so many things. It's probably unlikely, but something's gonna happen.
If the Ravens lose this game, I think the narrative becomes so untenable, whereas I think the narrative around the Cowboys is always awful. So I don't know and this is why emotionally I agree with you. Like, I think the Ravens are coming in thinking we have to win this game no matter what. I think the Cowboys would lose this game and kind of come out feeling fine, despite the fact that everything's always melting down in Dallas. So
But they
I don't.
still have Dak, so it's fine. Like, that's kind of then basically how it'll play off. It does always feel like a little bit of like a meltdown.
The Cowboys defense just got no pressure on Derek Carr in week 2. So I'm, despite the fact that the Ravens don't have a great offensive line, just Lamar is so dynamic that it's going. Again, I'm talking about the Ravens winning because I'm really hopeful. So I'm picking the Cowboys, but I'm about to give a point that's in favor of the Ravens. But I think that Lamar should be able to escape any pressure if the Cowboys put a performance in that is similar defensively as what they did in week 2.
Hey, wipe your shoes on the doormat before coming inside.
I feel kind of bad about what I'm about to do because I have to say I put this on the outline before the games in week 1. I put this on the outline before the games in week 2 were completely finalized, but I still believe it. I'm calling the doormat game of the week Panthers at Raiders. So a reminder, a doormat game is 2 doormat teams going head to head where it's pretty evenly matched. So disclaimer, yes, I hear you yelling at me. Feel free to leave it in the comments if you want. But the Raiders just beat the Ravens. But do we all actually think the Raiders are going to be any good? And the Panthers had to return to our doormat game of the week, and they're likely the worst team in the league. So, Nicole, Panthers at Raiders. Any hope for the Panthers to pick up their first win here?
Definitely not. I do have the Raiders in this matchup. Not a hot take. However, I do think I'll make the case that the Panthers are so much of a doormat that they just pull this entire matchup down to solidify it as the doormat game of the week. The Panthers currently in the middle of their game have a countdown to a count up to the last time they had a lead in a game. Literally in the middle of the game today, it was like 240 plus days since the Panthers have had a lead in an NFL game. And that is, so when you have a timer going for the last time that you had a lead in the game, not even when you won, I think that you really have solidified as the doormat of game of the week just by existing and having that countdown there. So I do pick the Raiders. Not a hot take. Sorry, Bryce Young. I think you have a really pretty teal color in your team colors.
I agree with everything you said. The only thing I will say that I will be monitoring this season is even the worst NFL teams still win a couple games. Like, they should still win 3 to 4 games every season. Like, even the worst teams ever, I don't think this Panthers team is going to go winless this season. So every time I put them in the doormat game,
who they're going to lose, who they're going to beat.
Yeah, so every time I put the Panthers in the doormat game of the week going forward, it's me saying, I think there is a small chance this week that this is one of those weeks where the Panthers win because they are playing a team that is also bad. So I do think this is one of those weeks. That being said, I am definitely picking the Raiders, but I am saying that there's a chance that this is one of those weeks. Think it's unlikely.
It would be incredible. Okay, so they're definitely calling things now. The Giants are gonna lose to the Panthers honestly, Panthers have a pretty stacked schedule, and I can only confirm.
Or is it just stacked because
they're
the
the
Panthers and
yeah.
But they do get to play the Giants and they get to play the Washington Commanders.
So those could be. They'll definitely They'll definitely beat the Giants. That's where I'll.
You say that? I think they're going to end up beating some team that just has a bad game. Like, it's going to be some random something. Because it's the NFL, and that's how it works.
That's how it all works. But yeah.
But yeah, if I could see them circling the Giants game, like, this is the game we're going to win.
We have this one, guys. Just keep holding out till we play the Giants.
Oh, gosh. I'm sorry, Panthers fans. It must be hard.
Hungry dogs run faster.
Underdog game of the week. More than 3. That's a horrible description of that. I'm like, sorry, my
I like
brain's
that you
starting
just
to.
chanted that instead of
This
like,
is
I
what
was
I.
like, oh, is
This
she
is.
going to introduce the segment? So you like chanted half sentences. Yes, this is the underdog picks, our underdog picks of the week. The line needs to be more than 3 in order for us to consider them an underdog. We're not just going to give you like, they're, +1 against the spread, so they're an underdog. Like, no, we're going to give you some
No.
bold takes and predictions here. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first because it's potentially bold based on things that we saw today, but maybe not so bold based on previous things that we saw last week. Between the Bengals and the Commanders, I'm picking the Commanders for probably a really wild upset at +7.5.
That is bold. Wow.
Bold and wild.
Yeah.
I know. I'm really going for it, but it could not happen.
Not even on my radar. I'm pretty sure the Washington Commanders beat the New York Giants today, exclusively scoring field goals.
Fantastic.
And
Can't not happen. That's why they call it an upset.
Yeah. I can't say that I have anything interesting to tell you or the audience about the Commanders. I have watched 0 Commanders football since the season has started. But I think that's a bold upset pick. I'm shocked that you didn't pick one of the 2 options I wrote down. Now, when this episode's actually released, it is Friday. So I can't actually pick them as my underdog pick of the week. But my underdog of the week is probably New England plus 6.5 over the Jets. I think 6.5 is an insane line for that game. I think it should be much closer. So when you're all listening to this, you can either laugh at me or be like, wow, she's so smart. She knows stuff. Both are fair and highly likely to happen. But because we don't do Thursday night, because this comes out on Friday, I'm going bold and I'm picking Atlanta to upset the Chiefs. Atlanta's at home. The line, for some reason, is only set at 4.5 as of recording this, which feels close. Chiefs have to lose eventually, but full disclaimer, we haven't seen Atlanta play the Eagles at all, and I have 0 idea if Kirk Cousins can move at all after week 1 performance, so TBD. Maybe we'll throw in a little extra thing after. I really don't want to talk about that Eagles-Falcons game, but I guess I'm sticking with Atlanta as my upset of the week over Kansas City. Honestly, there's a lot of really interesting games next week that I think are close, and they just aren't considered underdog picks because they're so close.
The lines are so close on so many of the games next week. So we have some really solid, like, great matchups. So it'll be some good football.
Let's tush the push. Let's push the tush. Let's tush the push. Let's push the tush. Let's tush the push. Let's push the tush.
So I have a probably repetitive, but it continues to be exciting offensive line for me to watch. Is I am loving watching the Vikings offensive line keep Sam Darnold's pocket clean. And it's a big reason why the Vikings look as good as they've looked. For week 3, I'm really intrigued. Can the Vikings offensive line keep this up against what is a good Houston Texans pass rush? So just looking at the line matchup, not at the game as a whole, do you predict that the Vikings offensive line are going to be able to keep this up? Or do you think they're going to struggle against Houston's pass rush?
I have the Vikings winning against Houston in week 3.
Whoa!
I know. I really this Minnesota O-line looks so good, especially on the edges, and just like, hey, Sam Darnold has not given me enough reasons while he's standing upright to not believe that he can make some incredible plays thus far this season. And yeah, the Minnesota Vikings offense has been one of my highlights to watch this year. So I'm on this bandwagon train. I'm going with Minnesota.
I've been disappointed in Houston's defensive line, particularly watching them play Chicago. And Chicago's offensive line isn't super great. And there's a rookie quarterback back there. And as of, halfway through the third, they've only recorded 1 sack. That's not fantastic. That's a very kind way of me saying not good. Should be sacking the rookie quarterback more. So I think that the Vikings offensive line will keep it up, and I think they'll win this offensive line versus defensive line matchup. That being said, I think Houston wins the game. I think Vikings winning streak will come to an end, but in a very close game because I think the offensive line will keep it close.
Hey, click over to that game.
I have 3 games for 1 p.m. I'm so unsure which ones I'm going to pick.
Okay, well, I'm going to go first because guess what? I'm not going to be watching any of the 1 p.m. games next week because the Eagles play at 1 p.m. So I'm going to be switching away from RedZone, not watching it at all, and exclusively zeroing in on the Eagles game like I do all the time. And I refuse to pick Eagles games on this podcast, so I will not be making a prediction. I will just be telling you all I will be an anxious, nervous mess during the 1 p.m. window watching the Eagles. So why don't you give us 2 of the 3 game options that you would switch away for that 1 p.m. window?
Okay, so I do have the Eagles as one of the games that I would switch away for, Eagles versus Saints, but I was like, Brown's going to pick that, so I'm not going to pick that. So that is one of the 3. So then my others are... Here. I was like, I know exactly. I was like, Eagles play at 1 p.m. I will not hear from Briana from 1 to 4:30 of next week. It's great. So basically,
from noon to 4:30.
Yeah, honestly, I will hear from Briana like when the second window of games begin. Is literally that's what will go down. I will obviously be switching to either our line matchup, which is Minnesota Vikings versus the Houston Texans, or I also have the Bucks versus Broncos because what are my weird vested interests this year? Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield. Do I think it's going to be a good game? No. Do I want to? Will this be one of my 4 windows? 100%. You best believe it. So I will be having Minnesota and Houston with sound. Honestly, it'll probably be I will have the Eagles and Saints with sound, but it'll be Minnesota, Houston with sound, and then Tampa, Denver muted. But gotta watch this. My intrigue of quarterback pairing.
So, in your hyperfixation on Bo Nix, do you have him winning the game this week?
No, I definitely have the Bucks winning against Denver because then I'm still, again, I'm looking at. I really think there's like this Bucks potential in some way and I don't see that in Denver, but I just have this. I'm kind of waiting to see what will it take to happen in Denver for them to bench Bo Nix and put in Zach Wilson.
I won't even justify that with a full conversation. I think you are like the only person in the world who cares about that, and I love that for you.
It's my weird hyperfixation niche thing that I just really want to see what happens. Will there be a weekend where Zach Wilson's brother plays for Utah starting and Zach Wilson starts for Denver? What a cute little football weekend that would be to only me and their families.
I think Tampa Bay's floor is higher than expected. I think Tampa Bay wins that game. 4 p.m. window. I do have an actual game for this. I would click away from RedZone to watch 49ers Rams. I'm interested to see how the 49ers bounce back. The Rams did not look great in week 2. As expected, they're missing 2-star offensive linemen. Puka Nacua is gone. They're adjusting. But I think this could be a competitive game. It's a division game. I also just love watching the Niners lose, and I hope that happens. But I actually I think the reality is that the Niners win this game, bounce back from a rough loss this week.
Also bouncing back from a tough loss, I will be watching in the 4 p.m. window Lions versus Cardinals. I do have the Lions winning this matchup. Although Cardinals had like a pretty solid like performance this week where they like really showed up against the Rams. So I think it will be a good, interesting matchup, but I do think Lions coming back from this week will definitely want to show up and win out.
I think the Cardinals might shock the world and win this game at home. I think they're better than anyone expected them to be, really. And when Kyler Murray plays like he played this week, he wins games for them.
Yeah, this was one of those like games where Kyler Murray was like, "Remember me," which is definitely why I like found it very interesting to be wanting to watch for next week. I'm still siding with the Lions just based on strength and previousness, but that home field advantage could win out. So catch me in the 4 p.m. window. No one cares about my fantasy team, but I'm having sort of a quarterback crisis right now. And not by a crisis, because I just have two very competent quarterbacks that I have to decide between. Currently starting on my fantasy team that everyone cares about, Karma is my tight end, is Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Sitting on my bench, being very warm, keeping that bench super warm, it's heating up, is Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has outperformed Brock Purdy for the last 2 weeks, and I don't know, when do I switch the two of them?
Yeah, and it's hard because Baker's volatile. And that's his whole shtick. So looking at this week in football, Baker and the Bucks are going up against the Broncos. Purdy and the Niners are traveling to the Rams. We're in week 2, the second week of an IL stint, so there's still no Christian McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you do the bold switch and you go with Baker. Because, look, the Broncos are awful. Tampa Bay's home. The Niners, and this has nothing to do with the Niners' performance this week. This has to do with the Niners' performance without Christian McCaffrey, period.
And Purdy Brock looked like not fabulous today.
Oh, so bad. He looked so bad in week 2.
It did not make me feel good. Like, again, just watching him against Minnesota. So I was looking at Baker sitting on my bench, racking up a bunch of points. And I'm just like, maybe it's time to do a little swappy swap.
If Tampa was playing if Tampa was playing an equally hard team as the 49ers, I would probably say, like, hold chalk. Like, trust that the Niners will rebound. But if you can stomach the risk that the Niners rebound, I just think the Denver Broncos are bad enough that Baker should have another good game. But I think that is more of a swing for the fences. Hey, question. The team you're playing next week, who's their quarterback?
I'm up against Geno Smith next week.
That let's see. The Seahawks are...
Oh, but it's also Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb. There's so many other things happening on this team that's very, very scary. That
makes me think you should swing for the fences.
I agree. I think I might have to.
And I think there's a higher ceiling on Baker right now. But it's a risk, so you would need to know, but I don't know. Seattle's playing the Dolphins. Their defense hasn't looked great.
I don't know. I think it as of right now, Sunday evening, it feels like the move, but we'll see where I am come Wednesday.
College Football Corner.
Starting out this college football corner with our college football game of the week. We're getting closer to the time of the college football schedule where we're going to have many, many options for this game. But most teams are still playing cupcakes. So until then, this week's game of the week is USC at Michigan. I think there are a lot of questions about both of these teams, but I'll pitch it to you first, Nicole. Who are you selecting in our college football game of the week?
I'm going with Michigan at home over the USC Trojans. Michigan's given a really solid performance this year thus far. They had a really tough game against Texas, but I think Texas being who Texas was, Michigan will still be able to compete incredibly highly against like other really strong opponents. And I do think based on how we've seen where USC has been at the start of the season, Michigan, I particularly at home, can come out victorious on this one.
Yeah, I want to be able to take the opposite because that's more interesting content, but I'm also with Michigan here, and it's mostly because I don't think USC has looked that impressive. They've played 2 games so far. They beat what seems to be a pretty mediocre to bad LSU team in a close game, and then they blew out Utah State, which is expected. So I agree.
Yeah.
I think it I think USC is ranked way too high going into this game at 11, and Michigan is at home. And I think as long as Michigan can establish the run early on in this game, they should win it.
USC is overly ranked based on them beating LSU. But obviously, if you listen to our like regular week episode, we're not too hot on LSU to begin with and thinking that they're not too great. So beating LSU, especially with how close it was, doesn't necessarily make me think that you're going to be a top performing team because I'm kind of like down on them over there. So yeah, Michigan's the pick.
Upset alert.
College football's so great for upsets. Even though
College football is great for upsets. You're right.
Yeah, because it's also like dreams are coming true when like upsets happen. Although I did for this week, I will say I really wanted to pick Illinois upsetting Nebraska. But now Illinois is ranked. So I'm not going to pick Illinois ranked at 24 upsetting Nebraska ranked at 22. But what I will pick as my interesting upset of the week is an in-state rivalry of NC State upsetting Clemson and officially unranking. I know. I was like, there's a very good chance that we're going to end up picking the same one here. But
I have a second one.
Okay.
You can take that one as
but
your upset.
In-state rivalries, we love some Carolina
Nicole,
fighting.
I don't think I think one's in North Carolina.
Oh, the Carolinas to me are probably honestly like just one. Oh, because Clemson's so not in North Carolina.
No, it's in South Carolina.
So right, but it's close. Okay, Carolina rivalry. Taking back everything I said about in-state. Recording brain. It's a Carolina rivalry. But I'm going to give it to NC State here. Clemson's had a little bit of a shakiness, and it could be just interesting enough for it to happen.
Yeah, I don't think Clemson has looked good at all. So I think they'll be I predict that Clemson will lose at least one more time this season to some unranked opponent. And I don't see a reason why it can't be NC State. So my other option that I will go with, so we have 2 top 25 upsets to track this week, is I'm taking Georgia Tech upsetting Louisville.
Ooh.
Purely off vibes. No, I've just
that's okay. But that's sometimes what upsets are. It's strong vibes. Like I don't necessarily feel particularly strong on NC State anything, but I do feel particularly strong that Clemson doesn't look too hot. So like that's a vibe.
Louisville hasn't played a real team yet. They're ranked 19, just based on clearly like how they looked against those two very just not relevant teams. So I could see going up against Georgia Tech, which seems to always be a scrappy ACC team. They could lose because this is the first time they've had to play an actual opponent. And then on the other side, Georgia Tech had a disappointing loss to Syracuse in week 2. So I don't think Georgia Tech is that good, to be clear. I just think it's the first real opponent that Louisville has had to face. So I could see an upset happening.
Although people have the talks on the College of the Game Days have been talking about how Syracuse is like a not opponent to like look away from. So it could speak that, Georgia Tech demolished Florida State. Oh, amazing. And then actually, got had a little bit of a competition component with Syracuse, and Syracuse is really could be relatively difficult this year for just internally. And so maybe Georgia Tech can show up.
The U is back, baby!
Our last segment in this week's College Football Corner, like always, Nicole picks the University of Miami Hurricanes game. So we're going to just start with straight up you picking the game, and then we're going to talk about potential for movement in the U is back meter. So first, University of Miami Hurricanes drive up north, face off against the University of South Florida. What are your thoughts and feelings going into the game?
My thoughts and feelings are the Canes should win this game. Miami Hurricanes should beat South Florida. Miami Hurricanes will beat South Florida. South Florida has lost to one opponent thus far this year because they've only played one opponent thus far this year that's considered real, and that is Alabama. They didn't beat Alabama, so I feel like that gives me enough girl math, college football math, where if they've been losing to their not real teams and they beat their not real teams and they lost to Alabama, that can fall somewhere in the middle of all of that and beat South Florida. So I'm picking the Canes. However, if the Canes win this game, I do not think it will not cause my is the U back meter to move. I'm in a similar place where I was with Ball State, that I feel like this game could only hinder my U is back meter and cause me to drop my rankings and belief in the University of Miami.
How many points do they need to win by? Like, what is the threshold of points where the meter drops?
Where the meter drops.
Right, because you're saying there's no way that, like even if
if it's like
60-0,
like if
UM
pulls what Georgia did with Kentucky this weekend, I would lose.
You would drop
I would drop, just like Georgia dropped in the polls. I definitely.
What if UM wins by 2 touchdowns? Do they stay steady, do you think? And of course, all of this you don't have to stick to. I'm just trying to get a feel for how you're feeling about the game. Because
two touchdowns I don't like.
Because 2 touchdowns, but maybe they look great and it's fluky.
Yeah, but 2 touchdowns is not enough. It's not. I need for South Florida. I need to be, but I don't think it would. I don't think 2 touchdowns would make me drop my rankings, but it would make me consider it. 1 touchdown, I probably would go from a 7 to an 8. Even saying 2, now I'm getting so cocky that I.
You mean you would go from a 7 to a 6?
Oh, 6, yes, because lower numbers. I'm blaming your preseason football preview that has totally ruined how I now understand the 1 to 10 system. Yes, I would drop the U is back to a 6, most likely. Oh, God. I'm not gaining any U is back in this at all, unless they win 112 to 2, which is not possible and would be a scoreagami.
So let me ask this way. Alabama beat South Florida 42-16. If the University of Miami does better than that, on the road, by the way, Bama was home, does that move your needle up for your U is back meter because they did better than Bama?
No.
Right.
This is where
I'm too level-headed about this.
I know I'm getting nervous now because we're approaching we're approaching real opponents, and I just am getting nervous, and literally my hands are getting clammy as I'm talking about this because an AP ranking 8's a single number. When it was 10, it was ooh, it's still the 2 digits, and now it's an 8, and I don't like that. That makes me feel really anxiety and real anxious, but we love Cam Ward. I love Cam Ward a lot, and it's fine. Everything's fine, and I go Canes, and we're so hyped and excited and not nervous. Go Canes.
It's time for the final buzzer.
San Francisco continues to get hit with the injury bug. Now Deebo Samuel will miss at least a couple weeks, and as of Thursday evening, Kittle seems to be missing practice as well, and it's uncertain if he will play. And this list isn't even the complete list of injuries going on with the 49ers, but probably the biggest names in headlines. Basically, Nicole definitely needs to start Baker. The Panthers have already benched Bryce Young, so early in this episode we were like, I wonder when that's going to happen. Well, it has officially happened for week 3. Andy Dalton will be Carolina's new QB1 this week. Texans running back Joe Mixon is missing practice due to an ankle injury. For the Eagles, A.J. Brown remains out, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who seemed to injure himself on Monday Night Football, also did not practice this week. It looks like Justin Herbert is going to play on Sunday, but it's notable that he's been banged up for most of this week. After initial reports that he'll have to miss 5 to 7 weeks, Jordan Love was practicing with pads on today. Uncertain if he's actually going to play in week 3, but it looks like a sure in for week 4. Talking a lot about negative injury news for teams, but in positive news, it seems like Higgins is back at practice for Cincinnati. The Dolphins have officially placed Tua Tagovailoa on the injured reserve, meaning he's required to miss at least 4 weeks of football. We stated this in our Tuesday episode, but as we get more news about what Tua and the Dolphins actually decide to do, we'll definitely do a full segment on a Tuesday episode of another sports show discussing all the nuances of the situation. And it looks like Russell Wilson is getting back to healthy, but that being said, I think we're getting another Justin Fields start week 3 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And last but not least, a college football note, Arch Manning is getting his first official start for the University of Texas.
Thank you for listening to another sports show. Thank you to our co-creators, Nicole Katz and Briana Klein. Thank you to the four-legged executive producers and me, voiceover man. Make us one of your stars of the game by subscribing, liking the video, and turning on auto downloads. Make our day by leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice and a comment on YouTube. Attend the postgame on social media for exclusive daily content. We'll be back to review the playbook every week. See you next Tuesday.
Today was another sports show, but it was not cautious.